Did you hear Irish ice smile?
Oh, yeah, sure.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for logging on and joining us for this webinar session that we're running today. This is our first Ask the Expert for 2021, and we're really excited to welcome Gabriella Henry from Microsoft and Sensei's Mark Soyster to talk us through today latest developments in delivering projects and portfolios of work, in particular across the utilities sector, but nonetheless there'll be something for everybody today, so including best practices in our ever-evolving digital world. So as always, all questions are welcome in this session, and we really encourage you all to make use of the chat feature or to even raise your hand to really engage with us in this session today. So I'll now pass over to you, Gab. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Alice. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
Thank you. So there are a few challenges businesses face when becoming digital, and one of these challenges is data. The sheer volume of data and also leveraging it to generate more value for your organization and your customers. The systems that generate or ingest that data trap it. And the question here is, how can organizations free themselves from these silos? So it's important to get the basics right, especially if data is fragmented and duplicated and sometimes not very secured. So we want to work towards getting a single source of the truth. But how do we achieve this? Next slide, please. So we can do this with a digital feedback loop. This is a framework that Microsoft developed, and we use it ourselves to help us digitally transform. It helps organizations become more resilient and unlock new value for organizations. As you can see here, there are 4 pillars. And to be successful, it's important to address each of these pillars in parallel. The first pillar is empowering your employees. How do you make your employees more productive and efficient by giving them the tools to be able to do it? An example today is in Microsoft Teams. This is a central hub for all your communication and collaboration, making us all more productive. But more importantly, are solutions like Sensei IQ, which is why we're here today, to help you improve the way you work. The second pillar is engaging your customers. Having that 360-degree view of your customers and being able to personalize their experience and adding more value when they engage with your organization. The third pillar is transforming your products and services and creating new revenue streams. And the fourth one is optimizing your systems and operations. So all of these pillars can be addressed with the power of our platform, which is the Microsoft Cloud. And we have solutions like Sensei IQ that we're going to hear all about today that can really enhance the value of your investment. So with this, I will pass you to Mark, who will cover business goals and challenges. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful introduction really to our Ask the Expert session from project portfolio management into adaptive project management. Now, one of the first things that I would like to do and outline is when you think about your own organization, and I know many of you have are in the utility space. What do you think is sort of on top of your mind when it comes to the most important and pressing business goals and challenges that you have today? You should all see a survey in front of you. If you could please fill in the survey, that would be awesome. Just to have a bit of an idea and a glance of where we are. All right, we've got 10 votes today. I'm sure we will find some more. Okay, it's coming in, 23 votes, which is great. Once you selected your votes, you can obviously see those results. We've got 30 votes. I give it another 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and how interesting is that? Digital transformation is actually once again on top of the survey. Now we have been running the survey actually across all of our customers, and you know, to no surprise, oops. Sorry, there we go. Oh, where is it? Sorry, to no surprise, Digital transformation is also generally, obviously, the trend that every organization is going to go down to, in particular during the COVID time, where digital transformation prior COVID was really almost a fluffy term, as I like to call that. We have now actually experienced what it means if we have to do work in a non-digital environment, and what kind of impact that actually has to organizations that are not digital ready. So super interesting and very much the same results that we've ran across all of our customers before. Now I've got one more of a survey, and really this is what are the main challenges for you today? Alice, if you could just run them again. Again, when you think about it in the business context, of your own environment, is it lack of visibility and high quality of the data for decision making, or is it a lack of project and program integration work and project alignment to strategy, prioritization frameworks to strategy and outcomes, or value assessments and benefit realization, dispersed systems and tools everywhere, which very much also goes down the path of what Gabrielle has presented, and how Microsoft actually overcomes those. Again, we've got 18 votes. I'm going to give it another couple of seconds. 20. I know we can have at least 30. We've got lots of people on the call today, and it's actually quite a close contender here. I can see that across it, the last or least one is actually the prioritization frameworks to strategic outcomes, which is quite interesting. Again, when I compare 33 votes, okay. So the biggest one, or the leading one really, lack of visibility and high quality of data when it comes to decision making. Now, when I look at that again from the surveys that we ran across our customers here, again, you've got it nailed down here. Again, lack of visibility and high quality of data for decisions, in particular in the project portfolio management space. That is actually one of the biggest challenges that we face today. So thank you very much for playing. That is awesome. So based on the audience here today, we wanted to introduce how some of those challenges, and obviously they are not new challenges, they are challenges that we've seen for quite some time, how some of those challenges have actually been resolved in one of our customers, which is Melbourne Water. So within Melbourne Water, we integrated and implemented a project portfolio management system, and really the journey that was triggered by Melbourne Water was really the existing and bespoke capital investment systems to keep pace of the ever-evolving business processes. Obviously, business processes are not set in stone, they evolve over time. Visibility and transparency across our investment programs was one of the triggers, demonstrating the ability to deliver on investment commitments with our government stakeholders, and streamlining how our people and systems integrated with each other. Again, as Gabrielle outlined, all too often data is actually trapped in databases, and trying to interact with those data flows as the business process flows has always been a challenge, especially when you use different systems. And then, of course, a better consistency and governance of the investment management. So really, that was the ultimate trigger for Melbourne Water, and really the ingredients that they were looking for an overarching solution was, on one hand, of course, flexibility to handle different investment types, consistency when it comes to governance in particular. There is, of course, process involved in any kind of project and program. Integration between line of business systems, as we already outlined, finances versus projects versus asset management. All of these different systems cohesively come together into a big picture. So therefore, visibility of schedule, costs, decisions, etc., had to be incorporated into that bigger picture. Simplicity, intuitivity for end users, and again, we see this actually in our industry quite a lot, where big, heavy systems are implemented. However, the project management maturity within organizations vary a lot, from the information worker or the citizen project manager that is not a professional project manager needing to manage projects, as well as, of course, professional project managers, which then ultimately also leads to that adaptability, so that any kind of change that happens in the industry, happens in an organization, that the solution can easily be adapted to that. Now, interestingly enough, I thought I'll give you a bit of an overview what we've done at Melbourne Water. So really the integration of work management innovation, and that was based on the Microsoft Office 365 cloud, and the overarching solution really incorporated quite a lot of capabilities and improvements. In that particular investment, Melbourne Water decided to go down the Microsoft Project Online path, really that one-stop tool for project management. We then had to integrate, of course, lots of line of business systems, again, visibility and insights through the reporting capability. Come on, you can do it. Yes, I'm back online. Can you hear me? Just a quick check.
Yep.
Yes, you can hear me. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's the wonderful, the wonderful world of the online and internet business. So really, when it came to efficiencies, reducing mundane tasks, we synchronize documents based on information that was already created and maintained in the system, and we did a word synchronization. Now, in the industry in its own right, and I'm sure some of you are in a similar boat, a Monte Carlo simulation allowing us to really forecast the budget based on what is referred to as the P90 and P50, enables through data collection, enabled us to run a whole bunch of different scenarios to ensure that the budget that we create for particular projects are actually accurate. And then we also ensured that the communication between project managers and finance is actually seamless through the usage of a financial hub that allowed project managers to update financial information.
We lost you again, Mark.
All right, I'm back. I'm terribly sorry. This should hopefully be the last time that I run out of internet juice. So really, we wanted to ensure that integration between finance and project management is seamless. Now, in order for us to do that, Melbourne Water uses Project Online to manage us, and this is actually reasonably old data right now, about 74,000 tasks, over 4,000 projects, over 600 resources, so that they can efficiently manage 2.5 billion in capital across a period of 5 years, so that they can deliver 2 trillion liters worth of affordable world-class drinking water. Now, again, when we looked at the different systems, we needed to find a way to integrate that, and thank goodness through the cloud we do have the ability to integrate. In that instance, there were 3 different line of business systems: the financial system, of course, an asset management system, and the project management system. And we wanted to ensure that the information really runs in a real-time manner. And as you can see, with over 72 differently defined integration flows to execute 1,200 jobs per week in a runtime of about 8 seconds, really ensured that we were able to do that in a real-time fashion. Now, when it comes to the Financial Hub, again, we wanted to make sure that this is scalable. There are lots of different users, of course, and lots of different interactions when it comes to transactional data, and that, of course, over 1,000 and over more than 1,500 projects at the time. And of course, again, outlining the visibility for decision making. We saw that in the journey and in the survey before. We literally have the ability to run those reports over, well, nearly 4,000 reports. All right, now I'll try to do this on a please connect. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry about that. I don't know what's going on here. So really ensuring that we provide that visibility through dashboards, Power BI in particular, but also paginated reports, because we still want to satisfy the ability to print in some form through SSRS, and of course these ad hoc reporting with our favorite tool Excel, where we have the ability to run those ad hoc reports. I did mention the automation of Word documents, and it really means that documents like business cases or documents that you provide to customers or to clients are automated. The data that was maintained in the project environment will then automatically synchronize with Word documentation tools. So it really enabled us that a lot of double handling, and therefore time-consuming double handling, was just alleviated through that automated mechanism of synchronization. The Monte Carlo application, as I mentioned before, Melbourne Water utilizes the Monte Carlo simulation for quite some time already, and they had a tool that actually needed to run over many hours in order to run those different over 10,000 randomly generated simulations. We ensured that every single project manager at any point in time can now run those Monte Carlo simulations, and really in a simulation speed of between 1 and 15 seconds, depending on the data that was maintained. So really almost in a real-time fashion, ensuring that budgets are always created in accordance to risk scenarios as well. So when I look at all of those different capabilities, what that ultimate journey looked like was Melbourne Water started, of course, managing projects for a very long time. Between 2008 and 2017, there were bespoke systems and external reviews of processes really happened at the end of 2017, where they then decided to go to market to find that cohesive solution. We then started this process initially with detailed requirements gathering and understanding exactly what needs to happen and what business values we need to accomplish in 2018, and we started to deploy on the Microsoft platform, Microsoft Project Online, with a combination of the Power family, as I like to call that. In those days, in 2018, not all of the Power families were readily available in comparison to where they are today, but that was the journey. And then between, at the start of 2018 to the point where we went live, it was about roughly 6 months, where we then started to train, of course, the user as part of a user adoption journey. And then we started to go live, recognizing the initial improvements straight away through automation, as I mentioned, and visibility. Now, this journey didn't end by the time we went live. Of course, as you progress further in that process, you do try to continuously improve those programs, and really between the second half of 2018 up until actually today. We continuously enhance capabilities, automate capabilities, and of course adapt new processes to the environment to the point where Melbourne Water is looking into what they refer to as a water cloud, not a subject for today. But they were kind enough to also outline what the big learnings were and during that journey, and I wanted to outline that here. Now, first of all, big learning was, we need to start understanding the goal and the business processes to ensure that we can automate them. I always like to say, well, if you can put a process onto a piece of paper and that works, then you can automate it. Obviously, they went on to market to find experienced partners and experienced partners that have done that before. They've chosen Sensei at the time. And then really we started to prioritize what needs to happen right now and what can happen at a later stage. In today's terms, we would probably call it a backlog in Agile terms, ensuring that we always ensure what is the highest business value in comparison to the effort. And then, of course, a big journey was investing into change management. If users don't utilize a system, well, then you can build a system as much as you like. Data is just not accurate. So that change management was really a very, very big component of that introduction of a platform that automated those processes. And then once we went live, we literally will listen to the feedback of users, because users that utilize the system obviously know best when it comes to efficiencies. And based on those feedback items, we then again build up a backlog of improvements. And that's where really these improvements that we still do today are resulting from directly from the end user. And of course, invest in the internal capital, so internal as in their own IT and their own business users. We did training, we improved their skills so that they can do a lot of those enhancements themselves, so that they have the ability to get most out of the solution. So these are really the top sort of 6 items that Melbourne Water selected when it came to the learning of that. Well, that was really just a quick introduction of how organizations, especially in the utility space, are transforming into a digital world, automating processes, ensuring that that the automation actually provides those kinds of efficiencies, improving the way that they work. Now, as a next item, I know we've got quite a lot of people on the call, but I was hoping that that you may have a story to tell, because it is an Ask the Expert session, of your own experience, what you may have undergone in your environment that you are willing to share. Is anyone up for an example that they're willing to share to the audience? Don't be shy. Well, if no one really wants to share, that means you still need to ensure that you go down the digital transformation path, I think. Look, in particular, when it comes to COVID, many of you must have been able to adopt very quickly to to working from home, for example. How did that work for you? Okay. Yes.
Hello.
Hi, James. How you doing?
Good, thanks. So Relationship Australia, Queensland had to do both. We had to work from home and also look at clients remotely.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting.
What did you do in order to provide that working from home in comparison to when you worked in the office?
Firstly, and most importantly, I think put the right devices in people's hands.
Yeah.
Upgraded our Zoom capability, then Workplace, Facebook. So we had collaboration, visual, as well as then linking up all of the people with the right diary systems, etc. But we're still going through that. We're putting in a new CRM, telephony systems, a new network, and adopting Office 365 SharePoint, and possibly even looking at Sensei IQ, which doesn't have the project management, the project online component is embedded. So, but customers have been very happy with it. Staff have done the job. We do collaborate where we can, but it's not as important.
Yeah, it's interesting. We saw and experienced that ourselves once COVID hit and people worked from home, in particular in the project management space. And that's where, moving from PPM into adaptive project management, we saw that organizations needed to have the ability to manage project data and project information in a digital form. And the cloud really is ideal for that. But at the same time, I've noticed that a lot of organizations then needed to prioritize the work that they wanted to do, because the business impact that they had because of COVID was so great that they needed to ensure that alignment to those projects that they approve is actually the most appropriate selection of projects. Thank you, James, for sharing that. That's really good. Anyone else? Alice?
So Mark, we also just had a comment from Paul from City of Gold Coast in the chat. So Paul says that they recently transitioned to Microsoft 365 with a whole bunch of new apps such as lists, planner, etc. But they had no corporate training on it. So you mentioned that it was quite a real fumble working around those new applications with no corporate training.
Yeah, look, how interesting is that? And I can see that very much, especially when you get overwhelmed with so many different capabilities. What I call the humanization between the digital world and the human in its own right needs to happen right now through screens and really through very clever and smart design of user experiences. Microsoft and Office 365 really is starting to hone into that. They refer to this as the no-code, low-code capability, so that a business user has the ability to define their own application through what Microsoft refers to as the Power App family, so that they can actually automate those business processes. But, as you outlined, there are tools available like lists, for example, which is another equation of SharePoint, really, from a technical perspective, and as well as Planner, the ability for me to easily manage tasks for a particular work items. And really, this is where adaptive project management comes into place. We've experienced that in the past. And really, I'll go down this path a little bit more by answering some of the questions that some of you have actually provided beforehand, and really, and I will break that up in different capabilities. So on one hand, one question was, high module project delivery. How to enable a portfolio holistic view while using Project Online and Azure DevOps at a team level. What a wonderful question that is, because it really outlines where adaptive project management comes into place. I had a conversation with Gartner this morning. We work very closely with Gartner as sort of that independent body, and really leading the view of the new of the industry, of our industry in particular, and really the change that is going on in our industry is quite magnificent. That process before people really was traditionally saying, hey, if you need to manage a project, that's the process and that's the tool that you need to use. And we often experienced almost a love-hate relationship between the project manager and the system, often only because the end user had the feeling that they only ever entered the information to report up, and it didn't really give them anything. Trying to change that behavior from process to people into people before process is really what adaptive project management is all about. Let the users utilize the tools that they are comfortable with, because as you outline at the Gold Coast right now, we use Planner for some of the initiatives that we manage. But then on the other hand, we have very robust project capabilities and project needs where we need to really manage a schedule with baselining in all of those areas. So adaptive project management really goes down that path of allowing users to utilize the tool that they want to use based on the type of project. And that question, I'm going to answer that question with an example of the way that we see adaptive project management in the Microsoft platform, digitalizing that and really allowing users to determine what kind of system and tool they want to use. So bear with me, I will showcase that and I will show you how you can actually use a system that either uses Jira or uses DevOps in that instance, or uses MS Project or the new kid on the block project for the web that Microsoft released, in combination in an overarching governance model that is very easy to follow. The second question here was past experience on how to get teams to move to adaptive work management with new processes and tools. And that really goes right down the path of what I'm about to show you on how we actually see the world. The other three questions, I promise you, I will answer them a little bit later. And this is really all about agility and agile project management. And I'll give you the view that we see in the 21st century. But let's start with that really adaptive project management and what to expect in, well, what I call 2021. I know we are almost halfway through 2021. Well, that's at least how it feels. It's such a long time ago that we had New Year's, and we are running towards March already. I can't believe that. So really, it all is in the context of people before process. And I'm not suggesting that process is not important. Process is super important to provide the governance, but embedding processes so deeply into an application that the user, the people, actually utilize the system without recognizing that they actually follow a particular process. Let me show you. So really, ultimately, the capabilities in a strategic portfolio management world, as well as in an adaptive project management world, is all about, well, in our instance, really strategic execution, making sure that we know why we run certain projects or why certain initiatives are approved, and that is really running towards accomplishing strategic goals. So this is really the executive layer of information so that executives can steer the ship of the organization into the right direction. At the same time, we want to make sure that we have that over Surely Telstra does that on purpose just to keep me on my toes. Okay, you can hear me again. I'm sorry about that. So really governance and automating that governance and ensuring that we know how we actually start getting work into it, into our organization, aligning them early to strategic values, starting with ideas and challenges, and then of course the overarching resource management capability. Look, executives want to know, how can I optimally utilize the resources of my organization? So these kinds of shared values and shared artifacts in the program portfolio and project management space is actually what we are referring to. So starting with risks and issues, we need to manage those on all of the different layers. And when I think about project management and then consolidating them into a program and into a portfolio of works, we need to be able not only to bring the projects together into a program and portfolio, but also allow portfolios and program to plan top down, which on one hand is the strategic portfolio management capability in comparison to the adaptive project management capability, ensuring that these kinds of artifacts are actually managed quite nicely. So how does that generally work in an organization today? If you think about it, most data is really dispersed all over our environment and often trapped still in either documents, spreadsheets, MPP schedules, for example, and that's really a challenge that organizations have today, where they manually need to consolidate that information. But if you think about even on a project level, there's always a bigger picture of what we need to achieve. So every project that manages risks and issues ultimately falls into a bigger pool of program and portfolio management. And the higher the organizational roles are, the more consolidated does that information need to be, and ultimately really ensuring that visibility is there to see that we accomplish our strategic goals is really the ultimate capability. Now, the Microsoft Cloud allows us to do that these days, and what we at Sensei did is we really started to think deeply about how do organizations on one hand manage projects, adaptive project management, but on the other hand manage their portfolio of works, really strategic portfolio management, aligning them to their strategic goals. And Sensei IQ in particular, our flagship that we developed, really hones into those different roles and capabilities. Now, at the same time, we wanted to ensure that the user experience is actually seamless into their day-to-day work environment as they do that today. And really, Office 365 for us is the chosen platform, and most of you, of course, go down that Office 365 path where you can manage your documents, where you can get your emails. So you are already very familiar with that environment. So what we do with Sensei IQ, we really utilize what the organization has already invested in and maximize that investment as part of a business solution on top of the platform that Microsoft provides us with. And really, these are tools that your IT department or even your business users are utilizing today, starting with Teams, that wonderful application that we are using right now, Power BI when it comes to visualization, of course, and then different execution tools that you are already familiar with. MS Project, Jira, Azure DevOps was one of the questions. And really what we are trying to do is we are trying to break the boundaries of the databases by utilizing Microsoft's Dataverse, which really enables you to let data flow together with business flows. And that's super important. Now, when it comes to those different capabilities, just very quickly before I then run into a bit of a demo, just to showcase what adaptive project management for us means. As you can see, there is a whole suite of different users that are always utilizing ultimately the same type of information, just in a different process flow. And what we are trying to achieve is really that 100% user adoption, ensuring that not only a professional project manager can manage project, but every single person and information worker can do that. And then, of course, moving that all the way to the executive leadership team, ensuring that they can steer the ship into the right direction. So let me quickly give you just a 5-minute overview of what we see adaptive project management actually means. So I do need to reconnect that. And what you see here right now is really a Microsoft Power App that forms part of your Office 365 environment, that no-code, low-code capability where a business user can very easily actually create their own application depending on what kind of information and what kind of business process flow they want to resolve. So in my instance, I'm a PMO and I want to see a list of all of my projects. I don't need to produce that anymore. It just simply flows into the application. You are a business user. You as the business user can very easily amend them, and then we just put simply some smarts behind it where I as a PMO can very easily just mouse over and see all of the different projects that I currently run. Now, projects need to be consistent in one way, but also need to be different in other ways. Depending on the type of process will ultimately determine whether this particular project is run in project for the web in this particular instance, or a schedule tool that works in Power Apps, or Project Online, or Jira and DevOps. And really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to give the end user the ability to determine what type of tool they want to use. So I'll give you an example. So from here, I could now drill into the actual user experience. So this is what a project manager would experience. And of course, on one hand, you see the business process flow that is consistent across all of the different projects, which is super important from a governance perspective, ensuring that we know what planning and execution actually means, that we know how to manage risks and issues, of course. And again, where we build in the processes so deeply into the solution that when I create a new risk, for example, that not only my risk matrix is automatically updated based on the information set that I get, but also that I automatically update the project risk, which is of course very important then later for the portfolio status capability. So in that instance, I'm just an information worker and I need to manage some risks. And as you can see, the user experience is really straightforward, just with some information to fill in, with some humanized terminology, as I like to call that. A lot of organizations, when they manage risks, for example, they have a 1 to 5 metrics or 1 to 6 or 7 metrics, but often we don't know what 1, 2, or 3 means, but we do know what rare and unlikely and possible, etc. means. So we have the ability to literally just fill in the information set. I'll just make this very quickly available here, and then I save and close that data set. And as I then, of course, save that data set, the risk metrics will automatically be updated. The project reports will automatically be updated and all of those things. Now, this particular one actually has a very small amount of different artifacts that I need to manage, just some risks and issues, some change requests, some lessons that I learned, and some documents really. And right now I only have one change request that I've newly created and haven't submitted for approval yet. But really the key here is the adaptive project management. So on one hand, I do want to create a list of my tasks. And in our instance, we actually provide just a Power App schedule capability for users that don't really have a tool available, whether this is Planner or Project or Project for the Web or DevOps. They just want to simply create a list of their tasks, and we have that available as part of the solution, including, of course, the usage of boards in an agile environment. Again, if you don't use DevOps, but you do want to manage that more in sort of a drag and drop capability, of course, you can create your own buckets and then can associate that particular task to a certain sprint, and you can size them and all of those wonderful things. But let's assume in your organization, and I'm sure that happens in many of your organizations, you have different tools. Let's say you have Project Online and you have Project for the Web and you have Azure boards, and that leads me back to the question that was raised earlier. Well, what we do is we just simply and seamlessly now allow our project manager to utilize exactly the tool that they want to use. So in my instance, I have let me just see what else I've got. All right, in that instance, the user only has access to Project for the Web and Project Online, but of course, Jira, Azure boards, all of these other capabilities are part of that. And I now have the ability to literally link this execution tool to my project. And from now on, this particular project will actually manage all of the tasks and all of the work breakdown structure capabilities, to the point, let me just refresh that so that you can see that, to the point that all of the tasks, oops, can you still hear me? All of the tasks that we've managed in that native tool disappeared because we don't need that anymore. But of course, we have our project schedule assigned to this particular project. So I just open it up, and what it does is it actually opens up the application that you've selected. In my instance, it's Project Online, and I can start managing my work breakdown structure that way. And of course, once I have done that, I simply publish the information. This published information will then update the project in real time to the point where I actually, when I close that again, where I can then see in my actual project, I can see certain fields are automatically being logged because they are actually coming from the tool of their choice. And that's really what we refer to when we talk about adaptive project management. Now, if you see that on the bigger scale, of course, again, just going here from a an insights perspective, you can of course then have projects consistently managed through business process flows, but at the same time have the ability to manage the execution of that based on the tool of your choice. People before process. And that's really what adaptive project management is all about. Now, when I translate that to an information worker or even to a team member, well, I as a team member, I get different tasks assigned to myself across different tools. Well, how can I keep track of these different tasks that I need to manage? And again, this particular view is all about my work that has been assigned to me, all of the deliverables and issues and risks, but more so all of the projects that I work on right now and their different execution tools. That means if I say, hey, I'm working today on my e-commerce upgrade van project scope, I would just simply like to update that particular task. And actually, let me do that not on Project Online. I'll show you a different one because we saw Project Online already, Project for the Web, where we literally say, hey, my backlog grooming I need to do. You open that up and we really deep link that to the point where we open up not just the project, but the actual task so that the end user, the team member can just simply update that and says, you know what, I'm actually now 40% completed. I can close that again and close that. And of course, it will then update not just the project schedule, but my dashboard as well. And that's really what adaptive project management is all about. Now, that was really all I wanted to show you in regards to how we see people before process, ensuring that we bring this all natively together in a no-code, low-code capability. Now, as the next part that I wanted to go down to is really the usage, the other questions that were asked. What are some of the key challenges with transition from a waterfall model to a more agile or hybrid approach? Great question, especially in the new world. There is no such thing as you only do agile. And there's also not such thing anymore that says you only do waterfall. It really ultimately comes down to the business value and how we want to manage that, which then of course also goes to the second question. What are the trends in the agile portfolio management, managing a portfolio of projects in an agile way, as opposed to managing a portfolio of agile projects? Well, I'll tell you something. We will actually have an Ask the Expert session that will talk about strategic portfolio management and how you can actually manage that in an agile fashion. The magic word here is really SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework. For those of you who have not seen it, go onto the site scaleagileframework.com. There is a great illustration of how you can actually adopt a mindset of agility. And the last thing is also, what are the best ways to integrate project reports with agile metrics? That's a great question. Again, because in some projects we manage in an agile fashion with a task burn down or with different measurements of complexity instead of effort. We use story points, for example. How can I ensure that this report actually outlines that? Well, look, ultimately, and this is really where it comes down to, this is how we see how digital solution example, or how we see the take on agile. Well, I personally, I've shown this slide before in a previous Ask the Expert session, but I find it a very important one because it allows you to determine the journey of how you can get from traditional project management into an agile project management and the abilities in between those. So really, waterfall structured versus agile. I like to refer to it as Agile, the difference or the combination of both of them. When we think about initiatives, well, ultimately we do need to think about business strategic values and why we implement certain portfolios. And these portfolios are often either fear, fact, or faith, as we like to call them. Fear, of course, we need to keep the lights on. Facts, return on investments, and faith, sort of future investments that we want to get into. Well, how do we manage those portfolios in a waterfall and in an agile fashion? If you think about it, traditional project management really is a centralized control, project overload, detailed project plan, so everything in the design phase. Look, in the utility industry, this is a very, very normal path. If you build something or if you need to maintain something, you need to have that kind of approach. But then at the same time, you have that lean agile approach, in particular in the digital world, where you have almost decentralized decision making, quickly adapting to new situations, COVID being a prime example. But ultimately, you can combine all of them together through business values, and I'll talk about that in a second when we're talking about, well, in a traditional manner, it is actually the waterfall business case capability versus in an agile world we may refer to them as epics. All of these deliverables that we want to ultimately deliver need to flow into that overarching portfolio. So we've seen organizations really moving from, let me just call all of that out, moving into different areas from the traditional all the way down into that scaled agile framework. And again, I just want to point out that this is a slide deck from a very good friend of mine, Peter Kestelholz. I thank you for that. I think it resonates with lots of people on how that journey may happen. We see organizations either have what we refer to as a bi-module capability, where we separate portfolios for agile and traditional and then bring them together on a portfolio level, or we see agile within a PMO, where really the underlining initiatives are managed in an agile fashion and then moving them up on a program and portfolio level more in a traditional sense. But most of the time we actually see those hybrid capabilities where certain portfolios are managed in a traditional and other projects are managed in an agile fashion. It's very seldom that you have a pure agile organization, and these days it's actually quite seldom that you have traditional organizations that only do traditional project management. And I'd love to have some feedback there from you guys as well on how you actually manage those. For those of you who manage, is there anybody who still manages projects purely in a traditional waterfall method? Don't be shy. Well, that tells me that that's actually proving my point. Is there anybody Sorry, I'm back. Is there anybody that manages in a pure agile fashion? Is there anybody who works in a hybrid environment where you have agile and traditional projects? Maybe with a hands up. Bucky, sorry, my dog. Yep. So there are definitely a lot of people. Yeah, I can see that here, 3, 4, 5 people that work in that environment. And I'm sure you have those challenges bringing those data sets together. Well, the way that we see that really in our world is ensuring that the justification always matters. Now, it doesn't make sense to have a program report that on one hand reports against story points and on the other hand reports against effort. Now, you could translate story points into effort, but really ultimately we're talking about business value that we want to provide, and really that is the justification behind our projects. In a traditional sense, there's the business case, of course. In an agile sense, it's an epic. A lot of people just call it initiatives, where really the justification needs to not just be captured but also tracked throughout the journey of that project. And I think that is super important in order for us to provide those value journeys. And of course, they all flow into portfolios, which then ultimately turns into business value. So business value for us can mean a whole bunch of things. It could mean cost efficiencies. It could mean revenue increase. It could mean any other benefit that you may want to manage in that sense. So really the size of the value versus the cost will then ultimately allow us to determine that journey of portfolio management in a traditional sense and in an agile sense combined together. Now, James, you've got your hands up. Do you have a question?
At this stage, it's really
so you need
important.
to.
Yep, sorry, my mute's off again, I hope. It's the smaller organisations, I suppose, that matter to me, and they don't have like the luxury of some of these things. So it's probably a cut down version of all of that that's required. And the other thing is that we bring on a lot of partners who have their own methodologies that then you try to do a combined plan on. I'm interested in that sort of stuff.
That's a great question, James. Look, especially when we're talking about partnering or having external contractors that maintain really their own methodology. Well, if you look at it from a combined session, let me just quickly outline that. So in our world, what we then do, let me just, oops. I need to just open them up. In our world, what we do is we actually have the concept of key dates, where we say, okay, there's a project that is actually managed by someone else. And what we do is we then agree to certain key milestones. And these key milestones also then need to be maintained. In our environment, again, we actually refer to them as key dates, where we don't manage a schedule in our own right, but we agree with the contractor on certain milestones that I then maintain. And as the Sorry, I'm back. The communication between, thank you. The communication between the contractor and your own project manager is really only on that key milestones or key dates basis. So if they say, hey, you know what, my software customization is at risk to be completed, you literally then say, okay, well, look, it's at high risk. And of course, you can then, amend that and can add additional information that you may want to report against, a quick description. But really, that's the agreement between me and my external contractor. So when you think about it, no matter whether it's an agile or a waterfall or even an external managed project, there are certain things that will always be there. Well, certain key deliverables and deliverables translate into those key dates, of course, are there. And that's where you really find that combination and combined value proposition that you then combine in a portfolio or program status, or even in a project status report. So that's how we would recommend dealing with that. Cool. All right. So look, the ultimate message that I want to outline here is really business agility versus portfolios. It is a change to the culture where we need to ensure that we move away from on time, on budget, into ensuring that we provide real business values, driving them into the different portfolios of, again, fear, fact, or faith. The last thing that I wanted to outline there, and I know we're running out of time, that's why I go a little bit quicker, is really how do I change my organization to run down that path? Well, it's actually a cultural change that needs to happen. And when you think about it, it is a digital DNA that requires to be in that new culture. In order for you to determine what that new culture looks like, you actually need to look internally to see what and how do I work right now? Do I already work in an agile environment, and why? And if so, if not, how can I transition in that? You have to look at actually your staff and your workers in their own right. Are those young millennials, or are those experienced silver foxes, as I like to call them, that are working in your environment? And of course, the actual workplace. COVID has shown us that you need to be able to digitalize your workplace so that you can work from anywhere. And I know that most of you are actually undergoing that process right now. And that is, of course, combined with the technology, the tools of the choices, again, translating that back into adaptive project management, provide the users with the tool that they feel most comfortable in. Now, funnily enough, based on a survey that was provided, we were 4,300 respondents over 123 countries in 28 industries were asked the question, you know, what's the big difference between working in a digital environment versus a traditional one? Well, again, you know, 23%, the pace of business, the speed of change was just tremendous. 19% said that they actually saw a difference in the cultural and the mindsets where creativity was actually much more prominent. And I'm sure you've discovered that even in your own right, when you suddenly work from home. I know I have worked much more in a productive manner at home in comparison to the office, but still I miss the collaboration and therefore miss being in that office. Sorry, oops. Next one, 18% flexibility distributed in the workspace. And as we know, we've learned that 16% have literally say that they have an increase of their productivity by streamlining the process, reducing or eliminating mundane tasks, right? 13% improved access to and use of tools. Again, Office 365 in that manner is a prime example of how you can utilize that. And the gentleman from Gold Coast mentioned it before. Suddenly we had Planner. Before we had to do this, I don't know, on a piece of paper or in an Excel spreadsheet. Now I have the ability to share that information digitally. 10% connectivity, of course, remote working and always being available, and therefore also having the flexibility to work at the time that suits them best. And funnily enough, of course, they're always the ones that says, nah, that didn't make any difference to us, which is a very, very small number of it. So really, if you think about it, moving your team, you know, what should that new DNA look like? Well, actually moving organizations as machines into organizations as organisms, where it is not a centralized, distributed governance going down, but actually giving that responsibility to teams. And that's really how we see the transition from that traditional into that agile path. Now, the reason why I outlined that is because the questions around that were very much about, well, how do I change my organization to become more agile? So focus on attention over boxes and lines, accountability to teams from the start to finish. For those of you who have worked in an agile environment, you know that the responsibility is not on a project manager, it's actually on every single team member. And of course, leaders enable the action and show direction and not dictate. And change and flexibility just simply needs to be planned needs to be part of an agile, and the recognition of that. I see that actually that executives struggle with that. When you think about it from an agile perspective, suddenly you have additional requirements that just came along as part of your sprint planning, but that doesn't somehow fit into the budget that I was distributing at the start. So the mindset of executives often need to change as well, accepting and understanding that within the change of a budget means also an increase of value, and then it still can be decided whether we actually want to do this, new action that we may haven't had at the start. So that's really how we see how organizations can move from that traditional into that waterfall capability. I know it's all very theoretical in that sense, but if you think about it, the difference between waterfall and agile in many ways has to do with not project implementation, but ultimately team implementation, continuously work and improve through delivery of value. And that's really the big change between traditional and agile. With that, I am spot on, 3 minutes late. I just wanted to outline, get in touch, and while you can read, that, are there any questions that you may have? Are there any questions in the chat box?
No, all there, Mark. Sorry, I might just say, so thank you to yourself and Gab for the discussion today. That was really great. And as always, everybody who's still on the call will send through the webinar recording to you later today. And if there is anything that you would like to follow up on either with Mark or Gab, just let us know through filling out a quick survey that I'll link below, and that way we can ensure that someone can get back to you. So that's all from us for today. So thank you everyone and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
Thank you.